Hey everybody, this is Time12Beard, and this is April's State of the Shader video. I'm going to go over the changes I've made to Icarus in March to start off April. There's quite a good amount of stuff. A lot of it is little bug fixy stuff, but some of it is really focused on reflections and stuff. One thing you might notice right away is I changed the default sky color, and it makes the clouds look a lot better. This is still with Cloud Style 4, which is faster than 5. In the mornings we get these nice pinks. I still want to adjust where the way the color extension kind of works. It's a little bit too yellow down on the horizon, but we get some nice hues. You know, I can adjust that soon. Like I just like the kind of sunrisey bit, and the nights by default are darker now. And let's get into some of the other changes. I'll that I do a sunrise as I try to think of them. It's going to be, I added LUTs for color grading. There's all kinds of reflection detail, including textures, off-screen and off-screen reflections with better shading and even per pixel emission values. There's mob reflections that are textured off-screen with a special mob atlas. There's improvements to different kinds of the lighting and the 3D grass shaders, and I've temporarily disabled the sand and snow physics for like the kind of doing it the way the 3D grass was, where you can make footsteps and stuff with it, just to make some other stuff work. And I made it so that all of the plants have new wind and stuff that work better with the footsteps and everything. So let's get into some like videos and clips. I'll kind of go around and just show some of the changes. I also added a bunch of new water textures. This is the old default one, which was supposed to have those wind ripples, but they kind of, just those really small ripples are kind of just showing up everywhere. So it doesn't look how it originally did. So I've finally added some other variations to that. And some of the bugs I'll get into real quick too. One of the ones still going on is looking through water. We've got a little bit of a weird kind of circle under us there, and there is some problems with looking out of water. We cannot see out from underwater. You see those? I don't have textures of the fish yet, so they're just showing up as cubes. Things that aren't assigned values yet are just colored cubes, master color, and let's think, what was the other one? Underground water and glass is lit kind of funny and too bright. I'll probably show that too. So let's get into a video and I'll show all that. Okay, so the recursive reflection option no longer does crazy fireflies that glitch. Here it is now. Here it is what it was doing before. You might remember this from the last video. This is going to have flashing. So here's how it was bugging out before. It was a pretty easy fix. I just had to tell it not to allow it to make lasers brighter than the sun when there's even if something is reflecting and bouncing around a bunch. And this should make some really good improvements on some materials, especially the like dynamically lit scenes like underground and everything. Alright, so I'm going to go through some videos that I've taken over the last few days to kind of show some changes. Here's a test of showing the off-screen entity reflections. You can see a little keeper head there, where he's hiding over here in this hole. There's a zombie. It's not perfect. You can see it's not perfect. But I've got a texture atlas that you can make your own and load to the resource pack, and then it loads in assigns and tries to guess where the head is and where the body is and where the feet are. It's not perfect, obviously, but it's something that started. The difficulty with doing performant mob reflections is there's no data given to us by Minecraft of what's off screen. I've got to save it myself. So with everything else, I'll do it as blocks, and then with these entities, I'm saving them as blocks, and I'm just kind of giving each block a texture in the atlas, depending on what it is. But you can see we get duplicates. I can probably fix that pretty easy. And one other thing I want to do is possibly do them as billboards instead of being cubed models, so that then instead of having an actual face on the side, they would just always face you. Let's see what we've got next here. That's not, I think that's Pegasus. Okay, so with the plants, I've done some stuff with the kelp. It now waves underwater. So you can see you get this nice kind of water movement deal with it. So the frame rate's going to be really low on some of these, because when I test, I'm usually keeping the frame rate low so I don't just destroy my GPU for no reason. And I also ended up putting that same waviness on the grass. It looks like it's not there yet in this video. There we go. That same waviness on the grass. I think it's a really nice look. Before, the kelp wasn't doing anything, so that's a big improvement. Night times by default should be darker now. I've lowered the default moon brightness. What was this doing? I was fixing some of the sunset behavior too. The sunsets were doing something funny before, where the red was sticking to the moon even when it should be the sun. Here's some grass tests. This is with a really high def grass, and testing having the same wind that's on the 3D grass shader be on all stuff, so we get the same sort of footsteps and interactions that we get from players and mobs on the 3D grass with all foliage. These are different test videos, so it might not be working right on this one. I'll kind of go through. Here we go. Here he is crushing those little rose bushes a little bit for a second. Running through the play wiggle just a little bit. I also made it adjustable what the player interaction is with grass, so you can have it either wiggle or flatten or not do anything based on the player's movement. Here it is with the chunkier grass, but this still has Patrick's resource back on, so some of that might look a little out of place. The flattening isn't quite as good as I want it to be. Here's just a nice scene with the grass blowing in the wind and the new sky color. I just think that's a really nice look. That Ravager's having fun in the corner. Here's a cow just sitting there. No dude walking through the grass. Let's see what else we got. Here's just the grass blowing in the wind a little bit. Here's some sheeps. I want to make some changes to have a more variation in the grass. There's some code to make it have different degrees of fullness and patchiness, but it doesn't do nearly as much as I'd like it to do. I also want to add subsurface scattering to it and 3D normals so that the blades will actually have individual shading, not just shadow casting. That stuff doesn't exist yet, but I know how to do it, and I'll probably do that soon. I think this might be the preset where I had way too much stuff pumped up, so it's a bit high, but I think the colors are just doing a lot better, especially with the new sky color, which is also completely configurable. Here's another grass scene, and you see how all the foliage is moving with that same wind now. So it just has a better, more cohesive look. And the reason that I disabled the sand and snow physics was to get the grass working right first, because the grass was out of the testing menu. Okay, so here's some stuff. I added different water textures like I was talking about. Here's the old default one with those little wind ripples. And in here in water, we now have wave shapes. That's the classic. And we've got a few other ones here. Let's see. Here's the new basic one. And let's look at, there's another one. I can add more in here really easy. These basic and swirly are from Pegasus, so they're not that complicated. And this is without the crashing beach waves. They still work with physics mod. I might show them in another video here. They've got a new little bug where the back sides of the waves is is showing a little bit. Here's the physics mod. My display is dying, so my colors are real bad. It's hard for me to do some stuff. I need to get a new display. You may see with Cloud Style 4, there's some problems with it switching over to the distant horizons. The transition isn't right on these new waves yet, and you might see where some of them have the back face of the water. There's like an extra white clippy spot. Here's some more underwater with a new kelp movement. And that is adjustable. You can adjust how strong of an effect it has separately from other wind. Here's Cloud Style 5 water. To just have that in the comparison. Let's see what else changing in this video. Here it is with the crashing beach waves making all the foam. So that's still in the mix as a water option. I do also want to port the other cloud shape into this cloud renderer, because I think that would be a good combination. And I still want to also make this cloud renderer faster. This is the renderer that does the full volumetric from like bedrock all the way up to space. It's all one uninterrupted volume, so we get like the algae and stuff underwater and all that too. Here's some more grass with a sunrise with a new sky coloration and the foliage, wind all being the same. Just another shot. Let's see if I do anything here. It's just pretty. And I love that little wind blowing through. I just think it's a really cool effect. And that's with, again, like a really high level of grass blades. Here's vines now have is that just a screenshot or is that moving? They have a little bit of wind on them, and they've got an adjustable amount of wind for them separately, and they also have an adjustable offset, how far they come up off of the surface, so that they don't kind of Z-fight into the surface. That's just another scene of the grass. I like the grass so much. I want to make it faster. It's got opportunities to make it faster. And I'm just kind of redoing it and the sand and snow physics, because they use a lot of the same stuff with like the tracking the footsteps and everything. Here's checking the recursive reflections with a amethyst geode cave. This might be with them off, and then I'll show them on. I'm not sure. Let's see. Oh, it's also checking like the reflection detail. I'm going to go over that menu. I'll go over right here while we're looking at it. This top part, inside of quick performance, we've got reflection detail. You can choose how many textures to load. The more you load, it's going to be slower. First you could do none, then you could adjust the color, then you could also add the normals. Once you add the normals, you can do directional sunlight shading. You can add that now. If you have normals, that will also apply with the normals. And the sky shading here, I'll make better tooltips for these. These two don't have it. It also does directional skylight lighting based on the normals and everything. And then this second one is if it does that in partial reflections. And then here's for if you want to have textures on mobs, and if you want to specifically use a resource pack, so you can override the textures that are built in. And there is, I'll go over the built-in texture pack right now, I guess. I'll do it at the end. And then this goes into some other options that are new, and this goes back to all the rest of the options that handle the quality and detail and performance of the voxel scene, which is the 3D capture of the scene that's used for the light simulation and reflections. But reflection detail is the new stuff, and that's right inside of quick performance right here. Let's see, with the recursive reflections, with that and all the other stuff going on, it can get really kind of slow. This shader can get really slow and heavy, but there's a lot of good visual improvements too, and the range is there, so there's still stuff that's playable. And then there's stuff that's like, oh, this will make good screenshots. So here's with some of these new settings. I'm just looking at a cave, underground, or I might be between caves. It looks like the view's kind of messed up. This is with some settings way too high. Trying to check a bunch of stuff looks, and it looks like this was before I fixed the recursive reflections because we have that sparkle there. And part of what I'm doing with the being able to load all the different textures is by default the colored lighting on emissive stuff like this, where the glowing parts are yellow but the vine is green. Before we're loading the textures in there and the reflections and all that, it was capturing the emissive value based on the light, and then it was doing the average color, so we'd get this kind of bleed from the green because there's more green than yellow. But with the new setup you can get around that and have it not do that. I don't know if I show that here or not, but I've still got to tune some of it and get it to work better. The colored light detection based off of PBR textures is something I'm still working on between this and just colored lighting. So both of them will improve again this month as I do more stuff with that to try to get it better. Because there's just there's little things about like the flood fill helps cut down noise and is faster than like just pure ray tracing. But it needs an average color. It can't take a per pixel value, even though the other stuff can. Here's more grass. This is with the real-time caustics bouncing off of the water, making light there, and just showing. See, here's some of the variation where we've got like areas where there's more and less grass and it's more thick or less thick. I want to make that work a lot better than it's doing here. It should have a lot more of that. So I'm going to look through that code and make that do a better job. This is me looking at LUTs. The LUTs are a new tool in the shader. They've existed for other things for a long time. It's a lookup table is what it stands for. And it lets you replace any color with any other color. So you can import a LUT and then just have whatever color grading you want. This one here turns greens into magentas. That is purely done by the LUT, and it's making everything else kind of gray. Since they work as resource packs, you can just load them in, and it'll completely change the coloring in the shader. So here's an example of one that does black and white. This is going to be a high contrast one, I think. Here's one that does like a sepia. And there will be 2 different formats supported at least. This is a 4096 by 4096 texture, which I'll show. And then there's also an 8x8 or 64 by 64 by 64 that isn't working right yet. It was working on my phone, but it's not working on the computer. So I need to redo that. But the 4096 versions are working. Okay, so let's look at the resource packs that I was talking about. Here's our zip inside of extras, inside of the shader. You can extract these in resource packs. This is the one that fixes the color of the 3D grass shader on the sides of the blocks. This is the LUTs, and this LUT resource pack is something that has a license that you can do whatever you want with it, unlike the shader. So what you would do is just copy that resource pack, and then, like I said, this one doesn't work yet, but the 4096 one does. And the way you would make your own version of this would be to edit this. I'll show that at the end, I guess. Okay, so to make your own LUT, you would take that LUT 4096, whatever, you open with GIMP or whatever you use for your image processing, whatever your favorite thing is. And here we've got this, and there might be a better way to do this. I'm going to go to image, and I'm going to do canvas size, and I'm going to increase the canvas size to just some bigger number. And then I'm going to do file, open as layers, and just take a screenshot I've got. And we are going to Whoops, I got the wrong thing there. I'm on the wrong resolution. I usually use my computer at 1080p. The scaling is all messed up. I only use 4K for gaming. Let's see. I can't even see my mouse. It's so tiny. I'm gonna then merge these layers, and then you can go into all these different things. Like you can adjust your saturation, adjust your hue. You know, you can do whatever you want. Let's say you want to do whatever. You know, you make all your changes with all of the tools you have here that do color adjustments. And then I'm going to go to image. Where is it? Canvas size. Turn this back to 4096. And then here is that color grading. And then you would just do overwrite and save that file. And then that resource pack that you made a copy of and renamed it to whatever you want would now load those color adjustments you made for the screenshot into the game. Hi Sumo. Sumo the cat would like to say hello. He needs pets, so you might hear him purring. So this video is now officially sponsored by Sumo the cat. So in the extras folder, we also have the other resource pack, which is the mob atlas, and the texture that will have is this right here. It pretty much is just a LUT PBR format. Most of these aren't used yet, and they're really bad images, but it loads some of them. So we've got the albedo map, the normals, and then the specular texture for each one, and it's going to have just all these different mobs. Like I said, most of them aren't assigned yet, so even if you change them, it's not going to do anything. I don't know if anyone actually wants this feature of the mob reflections, because it's kind of goofy anyway. And then down at the bottom, I was going to have single block big things like parrots and bunnies and bees and stuff like that. If anyone actually likes the idea of that, let me know, and I'll make these all work. A lot of them aren't assigned, and maybe make better textures, or somebody else can make better textures if they want in their own resource pack. But it does each thing as a 3-block high thing, so we can have both like a top, a middle, and a bottom. And if something is extra wide, it would just add extra width to it. The idea isn't to be perfect, it's to give you an idea and the reflections of, oh, there's a creeper behind me. That's the full extent of what it's trying to do. When it's not active, it just does their average color, and I think that actually is sufficient. This is just to be fun. But if people like it, I can make this also work as billboards, like I said. And then you could kind of cut away and erase the edges and make it have the right 3D shape, and it would still have 3D shading based on the normals. Okay, so let's play around with some of these reflection settings that are new, and I'll show the differences. This is on the default preset here, and on the high preset, the changes it's got is that it turns off the fast light simulation mode, so we get better materials and lighting. It also, inside of reflection detail, it turns on that we load the normals and the color textures, and it does some shading on them. It does not have the recursive reflections on by default, and it does not do the glints by default. I can turn those on and we'll get a change in here. Let's see what that looks like. So these are no longer flagged as being buggy, but they are pretty heavy, and they do not look the best in the diamond room. But in most cases, they make materials look better. But it is slow because it's actually not canceling ray tracing when reflections hit something. It's letting that ray trace keep on going. There's also, if you really want to pump it up, a new config called true, and if you load that, here we go, here's what that looks like. It turns on the glints and the recursive reflections. It turns off, it's pretty much like a new high render preset. That's really heavy and slow probably, and but should give like the best lighting you can get currently on the shader without pumping up the atmospherics and volumetrics and stuff like that. High Sumo. Let's look at the reflection here. We'll look at the difference on the reflection quality. This is a good spot to look at it. So here it's off screen. Still has all kinds of lighting and textures. It does not have the caustics in the reflections. That's something I might need to think about. So some of the higher end stuff like that is missing. That's part of the glints, is that we get the water caustics. They're not moving here because this map is time frozen. On default, you can see it just does the average color for off-screen reflections. And for high, it does the texture and the normals. And that does niceness with trees too, because then you get like, the light will actually go through the leaves. Let's see, I can change these waters now. Yeah, so you get the light going through the leaves and everything too. Just much, the quality of the reflections is better shader quality than some of my other shaders. So what's next? Because here we are in a vanilla world. So what's next? Well, I want to fix the problems with the water rendering and the glass rendering, especially the way they look when you're underground, because they're just too brightly lit. I want to add better support for the blacklight glints off of reflective things to be real time and consistent. I also want to add more denoising and quality to have unlimited bounce lights in the diffuse multi-bounce light for global illumination. It's pretty much lighting stuff. Grass stuff that I talked about. And then I can go through and do a bunch of performance stuff. There were some problems with the sunlight glints where they were just really slow, where they're not optimized at all. And there's also a problem where I do the voxel ray tracing for stuff that's close. On the low preset, or when it's off, we do an unlimited distance ray tracing for the bounce light and the light simulation, but I do not do that unlimited distance on when the voxel tracing is on. And I want to add so that it will do the tracing on screen and then extend in the voxels and then extend it infinitely with the screen space data, and it currently does not do that. I also want to revisit the sand and snow physics and make them work again. Have the snow physics just work. Add the normals to that so it will have the right shading, and have those normals also be added to the 3D grass. And then I want to spend some time on the sand physics, and I also want to have it do the offsets and the footsteps that I showed in that short, where you'll have like individual grains of sand. And I want to have dust kick up from sandstorms and then resettle on things, similar to the way the smoke and mist shaders do. What else is there? Trying to think. That might be what's on my main list for right now. And then after that, we'll see what's next. I'll do a poll too and see if there's whatever you guys would like me to focus on. Since the last poll, I did get the off-screen reflections having textures, and did some of the other stuff that was on that list. And there's still some bugs and stuff to fix. I don't like the way that, like I said, the water rendering isn't that great right now. And I also want to redo the fog renderer to make it run fast and do the smoke and mist physics better. Oh, and the thing I didn't talk about is The temporal accumulation should be a lot better now, and it should no longer have ghosting when going around corners, and should just in general behave better. I found a typo that was making it not behave nearly as good as it should, and got rid of that typo. So yeah, I hope everybody is having a good week and a good month, and I'm going to keep working on this and try to push the limits on what it can do and just make a really good shader for that immersive experience that I'm hoping to get. So hope everyone has a good week, and I'll talk to you soon. And this is what will be on the April downloads.